I want to welcome everyone to the April 14th NEMSIS V3 implementation call. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be with us today. We've got a pretty full agenda, so there'll be lots of items for discussion. Just as a reminder, these meetings are recorded and we post them on our website and on our YouTube channel so that you're able to go back and review sections that you want further to review. Some of them get really technical and in-depth, or if there are sections that you want to share with members of your team that weren't able to make it to the meeting. So those are available to everyone. Also, just as a reminder, we do look at these calls as conversation. So we hope to have you participate in the topics. If you have questions or comments or concerns, feel free to unmute your phone and ask those questions or use the chat feature. We'll watch that as well. And then at the end, there is an open forum section so that if there are questions or concerns that didn't get touched on during the agenda, you are welcome to bring them up during that time. We've got a lot of really great, experienced people on these phone calls, so we can generally dig through questions and concerns pretty well. Let's go ahead and start our meeting today. Laurel Baeder is going to give us a maintenance update and then talk to us for just a few minutes on the vendor probation.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. So for our maintenance update, our maintenance window is coming right up next week. It is on the 20th and 21st of April. This month, we're just going to be doing some routine server patching and that type of maintenance. We don't expect there to be any lengthy downtimes, nothing more than a few minutes here or there. If you do notice any problems, of course, as always, just let us know. So going right along with that maintenance update, we have been receiving a lot of data this year. As usual, it's more than in past years. And we would just ask that vendors that submit to the TAC, if you send those retrieve status requests seconds after you submit your data, you may want to increase that duration to 10, 20, 30 minutes after you send that initial data, because processing is just not quite as fast as it was, and you probably will not get that successful one response if you wait just a few seconds. So if that's something that you could adjust in your system, you might get a more valuable response if you give us a few more minutes to process those records. But we'd like to thank everyone for working on getting their volume up. It's great to see so many records and have so much data to work with. So that's our maintenance update. If anyone has any questions about those items, feel free to shoot me an email and I can do what I can to help you out or find the answer if I don't know it. Vendor probation, our quick update here is that everyone who was on probation at the beginning of the year has successfully completed it. And I'm really delighted to put those 6 software products back on the website as no longer on probation. And just like to thank everyone who completed those requirements and everyone who has been continuing to attend these meetings, as well as complete compliance recertifications and be patient with us as we all sort of adapt to the changes in compliance testing. If anyone has any questions about compliance, feel free to shoot me an email, or you can also email Atim, who has been helping me out lately as we move through new applications. And that's all the update I had for you today. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Julianne.
Thank you, Laurel. Any questions for Laurel? All right. Clay, do you want to introduce our guest? We've had her on before, but maybe a short introduction would be good.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. So Andrea Fourquet is back on the call with us again today. She has been working on some great profiles through IHE that implement the NEMSIS V3.5.0 standard in both a FHIR implementation and also in a CDA implementation for a number of them. Andrea has an update in regards to a last call for public comments on 2 of the profiles that she has been developing, and then also wanted to talk a little bit about some strategy moving forward through the year, how we can best serve the vendors in making some connectathons or hackathons available to help with interoperability progress. So I think Andrea is on the line. Are you with us, Andrea?
Yes, I am.
All right, fantastic. I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Hey, hello, everyone. For the public comment discussion, I was just coming out here for the last call for public comment. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, there is a call that was set up for any additional questions on the comments that were submitted, or discussion on any comments that you would like to submit. But and I can help submit them for you on behalf of you, or if you have just general questions about it. The next step of that would be to resolve those public comment questions, and then to bring it to the committee for approval for trial implementation. Then after that, as Clay was saying, there will be, well, IHE is trying to put together some events if we can, that we can set up to kind of have some informal hackathon, project like plugathon testing events over the next few months, over the summer into the fall before Connectathon, so that anyone who's interested in going to the Connectathon will have kind of like the opportunity to be able to see what it's about, kind of have the preliminary ability to start testing out these profiles, and to be able to start any conversations about the about anything that may be revealed in kind of like the informal testing that maybe needs to be updated within the profile, or anything additional, I believe. And so we were looking for general interest in such an event, and then also what time period people would be the most comfortable with in this event, being able to carry out the and attend the event as well. So it's kind of like an open discussion at that point.
Yeah, Andrea, this is Clay. Maybe I could add just a little bit more context here. I think this is a great opportunity for us. Thank you for making this available. When is the formal Connectathon, Andrea? That's in 2022, right? It's next spring. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's in January 2022.
Okay. And I think yeah, and I think as you mentioned, Andrea, that will be an opportunity where we will have some EHRs available to actually do some real connect-a-thon work, right? We may have Epic or Cerner there present kind of with us, and be able to have that be a formal connect-a-thon. So this pre-work would be opportunities for you. I know all the vendors are working hard with 3.5 right now, but these would be more informal opportunities for you to be able to prepare in a more formal way to participate in that formal connect-a-thon. So that's we really appreciate this opportunity, Andrea, and I hope that that some vendors feel like the timing of this is okay. Perhaps any thoughts from vendors? Are we rushing this too much, or could the timing be good for Q3 or Q4 of this year to have some of these plugathons or hackathons?
So this would be implementing based on the version after comments. Is that right?
Yes. And
One of-
for some additional context, the informal testing, we would try to bring an EHR vendor forward to help facilitate that as well.
Hi, this is Kelly with Image Trend. I think one of our big concerns is that we want to make sure that this is actually being adopted and not just something that's being stamped by hospital vendors saying that they're going to use it and then nobody actually uses it. So I guess one of our questions is who also from like Epic or Cerner or so on is agreeing to use these profiles moving forward.
Hi, this is Laurel Baeder, again, the co-chair for quality research and public health at IHE. I can certainly speak to the vendor community, the EHR vendor community and the health information exchange community are already exchanging CDA documents, and many of them are starting to exchange FHIR documents. And so they have the ability to create and digest them. Now, their ability to create the specific one outbound from the hospital, that's going to be a taller order for them, just because they may not have it in their sites to have that done in the next couple of months. But we can certainly be approaching them for doing it by January. It's possible that they can. Some of them have good tools that they can just construct different variants. The consuming, however, which I think would be very valuable if you guys are creating a FHIR document or FHIR or a CDA document, they're already built to be able to consume and share that information. Even if they don't discreetly import it yet, they can at least display it to their users, which is usually a first step.
Okay, thank you.
And if we connect a vendor to you for this informal testing, then there's a higher possibility of them being able to have it implemented in their system by January as well, because it's putting this on their radar to be developing and putting it, letting them know what parts that they need to be working on in their system to be able to bring it to the connectathon testing as well.
I couldn't quite hear that last part. Could you repeat that, please?
Yes, so I was just saying, so if we are to hold the event, we would try to get at least one hospital EHR vendor to the table to help you with this informal testing. And if for that vendor, if you start whenever we start this informal testing, they will have enough time to be able to start implementing these profiles in their system to the point where they can completely go through the connectathon in January as well.
Yeah.
So we would also be trying to use these testing events to bring some of these EHR vendors into doing some informal form of testing with you guys, so we can just awareness and getting the ball rolling on their end, so they have their awareness as well.
Okay, so we're talking about a single event in January, or was there something before that this year that was? I kind of couldn't keep track of that.
No, it's okay. IHE is trying to see if we can set up an event for you guys in Q3 or Q4 of this year
Okay.
as informal testing events. Connectathon is the very formal event, and these would be or this one or multiple ones if you guys are interested in would be very informal. We would it would allow you to just be able to figure out the queries or pushes and just to go through the motions of well, not the motions, but kind of like to get a feel of what you're going to be doing in January, but in a less, like I said, less formal kind of way. And we're looking to see if you guys are, if there's interest in joining an event like this, and if so, what like Q3 versus Q4 is preferred for you guys.
I mean, a little hesitant to commit right now, having not gone too far into this profile, or even I'm not quite sure what testing entails. So whether besides the package of information, the data packet, what else would need to be there? Is there? I know you have several other profiles for receiving and the CDAs, the FIRE documents. Do we need clients to talk to that as well? So what all entails the testing?
So this is Lori again. I would suggest that your hackathon, if you will, you want to bite off as much as you're ready to collectively chew, and make sure that you have somebody that's on the sending and receiving side. You can, for a hackathon event, send and receive information to each other as well. I have some programs that will pick a subset of their full data to work through first, usually some items that may be higher priority or easy, low-hanging fruit, if they're not able to do the whole thing. So I might suggest that approach.
Okay, so you mean even as little as building up the profile data set then?
Yeah, I mean, building up the profile data set, probably maybe producing one of the either CDA or FIRE document, and if you need to select one versus the other, collectively or as groups, then you can do that. Maybe it's the scene information. I don't remember the details of your content, but pick some content that you think is going to be the most valuable for sharing of all the content that you're collecting, and then try to structure a CDA document, try to structure a FIRE resource, and query each other or share it amongst each other and make sure it looks consumable. And you may find as part of that exercise that, this didn't work out very well putting it in this structure, for instance, because maybe you need, I don't know, maybe it needs to repeat or not repeat, or you'll discover something about the information you're trying to share.
And in that case, it would you would start the conversation and say, this didn't work for me, and we have this in if more than one person at least kind of identifies a problem, then we can go back into the profile, do a change proposal, and update that that piece to refine the profile. So in these informal event pieces, you're not going to be required to carry out everything in the profile as much as you would at the formal Connectathon in January of next year.
Yeah, you might find something is not specific enough, and that maybe it needs to be further specified because you discover my partner did it this way and I did it that way, that didn't quite mesh up, and that would be an indication to more clearly specify in the profile.
Yeah, that would be the purpose of this event. It wouldn't be to be. We're trying to make it so that we can take some small steps in helping you guys implement, and then also making sure that these profiles are where they need to be for your implementation needs as well.
Okay. So having not done these before, what is provided? Is there anything provided, any kind of environment, or is it just kind of put people in a room and let them go at it? Or
so if it's a face-to-face event, then yes, they would provide the room, the networking. So you're essentially on an isolated network. Some, with COVID, some of these events have been virtual, and I'm guessing with the timing, it might end up being virtual. That you do screen sharing. They provide the rooms, the Zoom rooms, or whatever tool they're using. They provide the test tool. So they're IHE for the formal Connectathon, and they're starting to use it for less formal settings. They have a tool called Gazelle, which not only registers you as a user, et cetera, but you can structure up a test plan and document the test plan. So what I find, if we don't have access to that, we end up with a bunch of Word documents that is harder to compile. With the test tool, then you go through the test plan, you document on testing with Arizona, or I'm sorry, I don't know your company names, but company A is testing with company B. And, we went through, we looked at the data and we considered this successful, or, we documented this issue, right? And so it more formally structures what you're able to step through and record as part of the testing event.
And there will also be access to myself, who's the author of these profiles. If you have any questions on the profile or like what it's asking for, or if you did something correct or incorrectly, and then you'll also have access to John Murky and possibly a few other subject matter experts for some more technical questions that you may have, or if you run into, again, this is a part of the, if you run into a problem in your test, you will have access to the subject matter experts for troubleshooting to help you figure out if there's a solution to that problem, or if it's the standard. That would also be provided. And then also IHE itself will try to engage the additional test partners if we are able to have if we're able to, we would try to get an HIE, a public health, and an EHR vendor, at least to try to be partners for you in this testing event, and to see where that goes. And I think there's also might be some sample patients that you can be taking from as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's usually a test monitor or facilitator of some sort who's, trying to identify. It's in the formal testing, the test monitor is actually grading you, right? But otherwise, in an informal setting, they're tracking that you've been able to make it through what we thought was test A. And we're missing XYZ company. Are you not able to? Are you able to? Kind of tracking and making sure that everyone is testing and able to test and getting what they need to do it, versus just sort of hacking away.
Yeah, and it's also just for being able to come in at the end of the Connectathon and saying test A was something that everyone could do successfully, and that seems good. And this is the test piece that people struggled with. It'll help with the identifying everything. And like I said, these events give you an idea of what needs to be worked on from your end, and also the EHR's end will have this to be able to get to where you need to be in the next several months, or intending on participating in the Connectathon in January.
Okay, and you're talking about the informal ones as well as the formal ones with what you're saying here?
We're mostly talking about the informal ones, but the formal ones the main difference is just the monitors in the formal one are grading you pass fail on if you can carry out the test, whereas this one you're gonna have more help and resources, and if you don't pass the test, it's not gonna do anything. It's just other than make it bring awareness to me, the author, if that's something that needs to be changed in the profile, etc.
Yeah, but the other thing is, and again, I know the CDA world testing a little more than fire, so I'm not trying to sway this, but usually we have a validator tool. So that you're tested for conformity against that specification, and if you don't conform, then you would typically go back and keep coding and trying to make the document conform. You run your test, and eventually the validator is going to say success.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And that's obviously what we're looking for.
Yeah, so maybe just to make sure I'm moving along, this is Clay. So I think the question is just whether or not folks vendors feel like this would be valuable to do? And if so, can we kind of move forward preliminarily with setting something up in Q3 or Q4 of this year to have this informal opportunity to do some testing?
I would say we're interested. It's we're not quite sure about the load on our side, but it's hard to commit to it, but very interested. So if we can get some work done preliminarily on our side and see how that plays against the proposed schedule and agenda, then hopefully we'll be able to do that.
Yeah, thanks for the comments, David. Perhaps Andrea, I'm thinking maybe Q4, right? I think everybody's just a little shell shocked from this past year and trying to get back on track with having version 3.5 kind of moving forward. Everybody was really kind of derailed, and we're hopefully now getting back on the rails. So maybe we should try for something in Q4, and then maybe touch base with you, Andrea, throughout the next couple of meetings and see if we can just offer some additional preliminary help. But yeah, I think there's strong interest. I know we're not hearing from a lot of people, but we one-on-one conversations, I think these opportunities to be able to build slowly and have expert feedback is incredibly helpful for this industry.
That's great. I'll let Amit know that you're looking probably closer to Q4. The only thing I would say for everyone to be aware of is that if that in the Q4 session, you might only have a month or two after that testing to sign up for a Connectathon if you're interested, for the Connectathon in January, if you're interested. So there will be that. But I'm excited that there is interest, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this event can bring out, and to help everyone implement some of these profiles as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that much. I'll turn it back over to you, Julianne.
All right, thank you. Next on our agenda is our ET3 representatives, Neil and John.
Julianne, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay, you should be able to see my screen now.
Yep, looks good, John.
All right, great. So just want to cover a couple of things in terms of updates in this meeting here. We've got a good set of numbers that we're tracking right now for onboarding to ET3. And this screen here is one that I just want to cover real quickly here. We've got participant and their associated vendors who have signed up for the API key requester role. And right now my count has risen to 82. And if you compare that to, again, the 184 participants, we have a ways to go to get us to the full boat of participants onboarded. In terms of EPCRs that have been sent to CMS, we have successfully broken the 1 million mark. So we're happy about that. And there are a significant number of participant agencies who are consistently sending in their data to us on a daily basis. In terms of the numbers who have sent in EPCRs, it's right around 42. So again, we need to get that number up. The April 30th date, we're about 15, 16 days out before we get to that deadline. And we just need to, have some type of a strategy such that we can get the folks that need to be onboarded in the pipeline and getting into the process. I want to cover a couple of things before I get to this next bullet here. Just as a reminder, we do have two different application systems that we're using for ET3. One of them we've termed CDX, which is Central Data Exchange. And there are, for that particular systems, a difference in terms of how you would onboard to them. So in terms of CDX, there is the API key requester role. That's the primary role that folks would be requesting to CDX. What that enables you to do is get a security key. And if you are a participant, you can give that security key either to your vendor, or you would be using it internally with your IT folks to send PCR records. There's also another system that we have, which is ET3 is the application name for it. And with that one, you would be looking to have a model participant role. So when I say you, I really mean the participant is the one who would primarily request this role. And that is used typically to view and manage PCR data. One of the things that I just want to point out to you is that typically if you do request both roles, you would see on your user interface two tiles here. And one of the things that we have run into in terms of a glitch in the software is that at this particular time, you can only maintain one particular role within the system. So going back to my slide here, you really do want to pay attention to how you set this up with your participants. So if I am a software vendor, I typically might be looking to request the security key requester role here. I may not, in most cases, look at the ET3 application at all, because that's typically what my participant would do. So you would basically instruct your participant to go in and request the ET3 application role, whereas you would be requesting the CDX key role. So there's different ways to go about this. And as your vendor who might be a little bit more knowledgeable in this, you can certainly instruct your participants in how to go about this. So I just wanted to point out that as a reminder. In terms of another reminder, we are expecting that you're going to put the organization name in all of the SOAP messages that you send to us. So we would like to be able to know exactly through the SOAP message who is sending this information in. That name should be the participant's name. And so when you take a look at the list of participants, there is a legal organizational name that's there in the list. That you can use, and that would be the one that we would be expecting in the SOAP message. Going back to the slide here, I'm going to go ahead and actually ask Neil if he would just talk to us about a little bit about how we're going about connecting with vendors and participants. We've got some plans on the table we'd like to share with you. Neil?
Yeah, thank you, John. First thing, I know if you look at the numbers, and this is all out of about 184 participating agencies, so we're definitely a little low. We've got about 2.5 working weeks before the deadline, and it's a bit, we're behind. But in terms of timeline, I think it's completely doable, and I'll get into a second what we have in mind that we can do to assist that. The process at its longest, maybe if there's a delay in approval, it can take maybe about 3 to 4 days to complete before you're ready to go to submit data. But sometimes with what we have in mind, we can actually get this done in about a day and set everybody up if the information is all ready to go. To that point, I think the project officers that have been assigned to all the ET3 participants have begun the process of connecting and reaching out with some email reminders and prompting participants to remind them about the data submission deadline, but also hopefully prompt those conversations with you and connecting with you as the vendors if they have not already. And so that's happening this week, and we're really pushing hard on that. So we're hitting the data submission from the participant side. On the vendor side, one of the items that I think Dr. Mann had brought up before in this venue is a possibility of doing, I guess we used the word earlier with the earlier presenters, but connect-a-thons. And our intent there is to, on a per vendor basis, so really set up scheduled on the basis of a vendor, and then all the ET3 participants that vendor is supporting, because we understand that the processes are different per vendor, so it seems like a better organized way to do it if we do it by vendor. What we'd like to do is just really as much as possible, bring in vendors, their participants, ET3, and some assistance from the TAC as well into a live venue and work through any questions or any steps that you might have for onboarding. And that way we can do that coordination and do it fairly quickly, faster than we do by email. And if everything is ready to go, such as IP addresses and just some initial conversations with participants about how they'd like to do the routing, we really can get all the onboarding done right then and there within an hour. I think is totally possible. And then that would just open the door for getting the submissions moving as pretty quickly as possible and getting that set up so it's off of kind of a concern for the participants. So that's what we have. You can also see some other resources on the ET3 Connect site that John has here on the bullet as well if you need some material to work off of to continue to communicate with your participants. But let me go ahead and pause there and see if there's any questions. I think something came up in the chat, but I'll go ahead and pause for a second and take any questions, or John as well.
So Neil, it's Peter here from Zoll. As far as the back data is concerned, will you continue accepting back data after the deadline? Because depending on the agencies, we might be talking in the millions of records that they're trying to submit in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, the short answer is yes. What we need to know is whether that's likely to happen for particular participants, and that's just something you can communicate with us. But we'll continue to accept it. Just let us know so we can make sure we're aware of it and we'll process it appropriately. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, this is Adam from Zoll EMS Charts as well. I sent an email out one January and then recently, like 2 days ago, wondering about the back data. I don't think it was clarified how much of the back data, like every trip that they've ever gone on. Are we looking for only certain dispositions or something that qualifies them?
Yeah, thanks for asking again. I'm trying to remember. I thought we'd gotten word out to everybody, but it's entirely possible we missed some communications. It's every trip. It's every trip starting from March 1st, 2019 to February 29th, 2020. It's everyone.
And why is every trip?
The why I can you shoot me an email so I know specifically, and I'll definitely look for it. But shoot me an email for the justification on it. And I can provide that document for you. That's been something that different participants have asked for, and I've provided to them. The short justification is it's part of the model's evaluation strategy that's been kind of put in the participation agreement, and there's some statutory backing for it with CMMI specifically. But it's truly part of the evaluation of the model to have that as a baseline data, and it covers all of the patients that a participant has had. And I'll say quickly too, I think there's been some concern on payers there, but given kind of the structure of the NEMSIS data, that's something that's been addressed as well in this document that I'm happy to share.
Okay.
Yeah, Neil, this is Clay. That Ann Vosbrink from Arizona did raise a question in the chat. She asked if vendors were charging for the setup for CMS ET3 to the agencies.
Not here.
Okay. Any vendors charging for the setup? Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, so just to keep things moving, John and Neil, thank you for that update. I'm really excited. And I think this opportunity of bringing together the vendors with their participants, their customers that are participating in ET3 will be a good boost for the vendors to be able to make contact and have a successful connection with their EMS agencies that are participating, and having your expertise there on that same call will be really helpful, and I think just bringing on a lot of folks. What do vendors think? And Neil, do you want the vendors to contact you with their interest in and their date, or should we provide a list of dates where we'd like to have the vendors kind of choose from? And one clarification I think we could make is, will ET3 site help with reaching out to the participants to let them know about the date time for the Connect-a-thon?
Yeah, I think what we would prefer is we can provide, I think John and I certainly specifically can provide dates and times that work, because we'll have to coordinate with our development team side and make sure there's a representative there in case there's any technical issues that he and I cannot handle specifically. Provide that. And then if you wouldn't mind having the PAC organize it with the communications you have with vendors, start filling in slots from there. I think, and certainly we can take some feedback from the vendors who are on the call here. What we've seen too is that there's a little bit of a breakdown from I would say at times the participant side, and maybe if the vendors could, once it's scheduled, reach out to their participants, and then we'll do the same from our end. So kind of hit it from two sides. Hopefully that'll make sure there's a good connection. So that would be our suggestion.
That sounds great, Neil. Yeah, that would be a great approach. Other comments or questions for Neil and John? Yeah.
Yeah, this is Samantha with ESO. I just want to clarify that the Connect-a-thon is only for agencies that are currently not submitting. So if we have a set of agencies that are submitting, we would not need to work with them in the Connect-a-thon. Is that correct?
Correct, ma'am. And yeah, okay. If you think those agencies, we're tracking the ones that are submitting, and if you think those agencies are fine and they don't even have any questions to quickly bring up at a Connect-a-thon, sure, they don't need to be there. We will defer to the vendors on seeing who really needs to be there. Our thought is the ones who aren't submitting definitely need to have a representative there. But if you think others who are already submitting might have some questions or just benefit from hearing about it, we'll defer to the vendors on that.
Okay, I think the common question I'm hearing more is how can I view the PCRs that have been submitted? Not so much the submission side of the question. But.
Yeah, so viewing the PCRs that have been submitted, the actual data that's in there. John, if you wouldn't mind jumping in and speaking to that, I am trying to remember the time frame, whether it's later this month or in a couple months from now, that those features are ready to go for participants to actually view their PCRs.
Sure. I think in terms of the participants being able to view PCRs, again, that's the ET3 application. And it is one that, again, once they sign up for it, they'll see functionality that'll allow them to go in and see their participant data that's been submitted thus far for their on their behalf. That functionality is going to be starting to be available later this month, by the end of this month. And we do have a couple of other tools on the table. One is a dashboard, which is much later, that would again give some perspective around the transmissions that have come in. So those are the two ways in which that type of information is going to be available.
All right, any other questions for Neil or John? All right, thank you very much. Really great to see that project continue to move forward, and it'll be great to get the additional agencies on board. So Julianne?
All right, next item on the agenda is just a reminder of the V3.5.0 sunset. That's scheduled for August of this year. There's still a handful of states that are still on 3.3.4, and we're happy to help you any way that we can in transitioning to 3.5. Just reach out to anyone at the TAC, Monet especially, she's our state specialist. And just a reminder of this timeline, and we don't anticipate any changes to this timeline right now with 3.3.4 closing and the date for 3.4 closing as well. Are there any questions on the versioning schedule? All right, sounds good. And next on our agenda is Josh. Josh has got enhancements to the state data set builder that he's going to share with us.
Okay, thanks, Julianne. Just get my screen sharing on here. Just a quick update that we've made related to state data set and mostly about the viewing of state data sets. So as you all know, state data sets are XML documents. They are published through NEMSIS through the Git repositories. They can be viewed via the NEMSIS website, and it gives you this web view like you're now seeing for Michigan state data set. That's done through an XSL transformation. So taking the XML data and just transforming it for a view in a web browser. We've made a few little updates to the view of state data sets. So nothing changing to the XML of state data set, just the way it's displayed in this view. One change is that we are noting the version of the state data set both here and up in the top left as well. So as you start seeing state data sets for version 3.5, then you'll be able to tell those apart from state data sets that were built for version 3.4. Second, if you look at the medication and procedure lists in a state, used to be you'd see a lot of these ones where it would say look up in RxNorm or look up in SNOMED. There's a couple things we've done here. One is we've updated this to the latest suggested lists or defined lists from NEMSIS. So any state that uses medications or procedures that are on those suggested / defined lists, those all get decoded and the labels are shown here. But we've done something further. RxNorm and SNOMED both now provide public APIs for looking up codes and getting the labels of them. So we're utilizing those APIs as well. So the only time now that you'll see this label, look up in RxNorm or look up in SNOMED, is when the API call failed. So for example, this code here, if I were to go try to find that in RxNorm, I'll probably find that it's a retired code. And so it'll have that label. Here's procedures. Michigan, for example, has a lot of procedures for critical care paramedics that are not on the NEMSIS defined list / suggested list, and now those procedures are being decoded here as you view them, so you get the labels. So that's the second change. Third change, let me go to the state dataset builder. In the state dataset builder, one thing we've done is we've indicated that this is for version 3.4.0. State data sets for version 3.5.0, state level systems are required and they go through compliance testing on their ability to generate state data sets for state data managers. So as a state transitions to 3.5.0, it does not need to use the NEMSIS TAC provided state dataset builder to generate its 3.5.0 state data set. It will use its state level software to do that. And so that'll eliminate some steps there because the state level software, they have to set it up anyway. And now it'll generate the state data set for them. However, we'll continue to make the version 3.4.0 state dataset builder available for several years to come because we anticipate that version 3.4.0 will be used on the streets for several years to come as everyone completes the transition. One change here has to do with custom data elements. And it has to do with what element you say you're extending when you create a custom data element. In the past, this list to pick from only included NEMSIS, I guess I would call them terminal elements. It did not include group elements like evitals.vitalgroup, the group tag that holds vital signs. And now in the state dataset builder, those are on the menu as well. So why is that important? Well, lots of times when you're defining a custom element, if we look, for example, back to Michigan's custom elements, we have, let's take eAirway.03. Okay, so this is their custom element, and it extends ERWay.03. So that's nice and clean. We're just adding some options to that particular element. But other times you're maybe adding an element that it's an entirely new element. So it doesn't extend any existing like element per se, but it does have to belong in a particular section of the NEMSIS data set. For example, if I were to make a brand new vital sign element, well, that element needs to be bundled with the other vital sign elements associated with that date and time that vital signs were done. So I have to have a way to indicate that this new element actually extends the vital sign group. And so that's what this allows us to do now. So if I view this custom element that I made, you know, which element does it extend? It extends, oops, I didn't refresh that. Let me do that. Okay, it extends the evitals.vital group element. So this provides more information to implementers about where they should put this element in the UI of their software. So those just some minor updates there, but wanted to make you aware of those with StateDataSet. Any questions? I don't know if I can get the chat to come up here. Okay, let's see. Anne said, does that include generating an updated facilities list in V3.5? Yes, the facilities list is part of the StateDataSet, and states will be able to generate their StateDataSet from their state software, and it will include the facility list. Okay, any other questions or discussion on the StateDataSet viewer updates?
Hey, Josh, this is Samantha with ESO again. I just want to clarify that once the states are generating their own state data sets, NEMSIS will still be hosting this?
Yes.
For the rest of the vendors? Great. And so it'll just be a new spot on the state-based page where we can grab that.
Right. Yeah. In fact, we'll take a look at that real quick. Let me go to, I don't know, since we've been using Michigan here, let's get to Michigan or any other state. So there's a menu here for which version. And as soon as they publish their first 3.5.0 resource, then 3.5.0 will show up on the menu here for that state.
Excellent. That's what I was hoping to hear.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone. Back to you, Julianne.
Thanks, Josh. There were a couple of questions in the chat. Did we get to those? Oh, Anne had a question about generating updated facility lists for 3.5 in the state data set builder.
Yeah, I covered that one.
Okay, great. Thank you. And there's one more.
Yeah, new one from Dipti. Will state data managers receive a training on creating a state data set for 3.5? Now that that will be generated from your state software, then your state software vendor will need to provide that documentation or support on how to use their software to create a version 3.5 state data set.
Any other questions for Josh? Okay, great. Next on our agenda, Clay's going to talk a little bit. Clay's got the next 3 topics on the agenda. First up is the joint linkage policy statement.
Yeah, thank you, Julianne. So folks know that we have been working on a white paper, basically a document that it's mostly geared towards states that introduce this idea of utilizing the NEMSIS UUID in version 3.5 to be able to link together trauma registry records in local hospitals with EMS records. And so we've talked to the bulk of vendors about this, and there's actually a technical call coming up where we'll begin to talk about the idea of how we as an industry want to strategize to have this move forward with 3.5. We were all a bit forced to think about this potentially a little bit earlier than we had anticipated when the American College of Surgeons kind of sent out the 2021 data dictionary for NTDB that included the a place for the NEMSIS UUID. Anyway, so there have been lots of questions, and this document does a great job for a state level audience or even for a hospital level audience to be able to walk through why we're talking about this ability to link records together with the UUID. There's updated graphics in this document, and it does a good job of walking through what is the value of this approach in regards to data accessibility or data quality, or what are cost savings that hospitals and states may see by utilizing this approach. So this document has been, I think it's been approved by NASEMSO. It's been approved by the American College of Surgeons. And I think NHTSA is just a couple of days away from deciding that we can distribute it. And so once that's available, we'll send out a NEMSIS Google group announcement that it's been posted on the website. So any questions about some initial education in regards to the use of the NEMSIS UUID to link together trauma registry records?
Hey Clay, this is Amber in Colorado. Do you have any idea about when they might start doing this linkage, like for the 2022 data set, or any comment on that?
Yeah, it's a good question, Amber. That a meeting we have set up, that initial meeting with ESO and ImageTrend that basically represent the bulk of trauma registry software, and then also with the EMS software representatives, we're aiming to bring those folks together to talk about the strategy of passing that UUID between those two different software platforms. So I think we'll have a better idea of that, Amber, probably in about a week.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Are you releasing this before the technical call or after? Because we had a bunch of concerns and questions that we're told to wait until the technical call.
Yeah, Doug. Was that the questions that were sent in by your group?
Yeah, like for example, we're not displaying the unique ID inside the ePCR. So how would a hospital get that without having a linkage to the ePCR company? That was like one of our biggest concerns.
Right. So great technical questions for that call. Eric's on the line. We could certainly hold on to this until after that technical call, right, Eric? That shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, just depends on when we're going to do the call. I know NASEMSO and ACS are ready to release this. Let me find out what they would say. I mean, I have it at this point, but let me check with Holly and make sure that she's okay with it. I guess it depends on how soon we can schedule the technical call.
Yeah, the technical call is scheduled, and I apologize. I think it's next Monday. I'm not exactly sure of that. I think it's April 20th.
April 20th. It's on the Tuesday.
Yeah, we can certainly hold it till then.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Doug. Any other questions regarding this topic? Okay, great. I'll move through my other topics here just real briefly. I've got two more. So kind of a change in topic here. We had a great conversation last call about how can we kind of improve the flow and implementation of Schematron files within the states, right? So I think Anne, for example, from Arizona, brought up the initial question that spurred some discussion here, right, about how can they kind of ensure that agencies have the latest Schematron, and you know, she was seeing some errors that would have been caught if the latest Schematron file was implemented by an agency, that type of thing. So we had a great discussion about this, I think, on the last call, and we continue to work on a on a number of the really great ideas that came up. But one of the ideas was for us to clarify in our documentation just some expected timelines, some expected implementation timelines. And so this is a document we're working on that really summarizes the much more lengthy description, technical description of the Schematron file generation and process of sharing that's on the website. So this is a much more kind of user-friendly, it'll be a 2-pager document that states can utilize. As we're working on this document, folks have told us, and it was brought up on the call, that it's important that the NEMSIS TAC at least indicate what is expected in regards to how quickly this process would be completed from the generation of a Schematron file to implementation within a software package at an agency level. So we're trying to clarify some language that just provides some expectations. And so that language is here in bold. And so I just wanted to run these by you as stakeholders and see if any of these expected dates seem excessive or too hard to meet. So what we're hoping to put out, I'll just read these. States may release updates to state rule files at other times outside of the NEMSIS release cycle, right? So we have a release cycle that's associated with versions of NEMSIS. Each state should submit its release cycle to the NEMSIS TAC so it can be published on the NEMSIS website. So yeah, we'd love the states to provide us with a schedule of when they want to be releasing these Schematron files. That will help vendors to know when they can expect to see files. States should adopt release cycles that occur no more frequently than quarterly, unless critical patches are needed. This just helps with the flurry of new Schematron files that can be presented to vendors and have to be released. A third bullet, state should give at least a 90-day advance notice to vendors of implementation of new releases. And so often states will indicate we'd like this new Schematron to be implemented by a certain date. That should be at least 90 days out. And then vendors should be able to distribute and implement the new files within about 30 days of receipt. So, so those are the expected timelines that we hope to put into this document. And I just wanted to ask if any of those seem unworkable.
Hey, Clay, this is James the Striker.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, is it possible that one thing I've noticed with the change logs from the states is some states will only include just the rules and not more of a description. And I know for our customers, you know, they have to go into the NEMSIS TAC website and look at the description to kind of figure out what the rule applies to. So if the states could possibly put in a little bit more description of what the rule entails and how that's associated, that would make it a lot easier.
All right, thank you, James. Yeah, it's a good, that's a good comment. Thank you. We can ensure that's implemented in this 2-pager. That's a great idea.
Clay, and I may just have been missing it in here. This is Ann Vosbrink. I think the 90 days, I'm just looking to make sure that I'm not missing it. Except for I thought we had a discussion where if it's just facility updates, it could be much shorter, like 30 days or much less, because there's no negative effect and you're potentially causing problems if for 90 days you don't have a new acute care hospital available. If there's no rule changes.
A good comment, Ann.
Clay, this is Ridgely. I also have an update that I need to do. You know, I have a number of rules that are too restrictive for people to meet, and I need to sort of, you know, make them easier. Is that acceptable to do less than 90 days on that? Because it's to, you know, make their lives better.
Right. It's a good comment. I appreciate the comments. If other states have similar feelings, we can back that off a little bit if that would be valuable. Maybe to 60 days or something. It would be tough to hold it to 30 days because they have they have 30 days to implement. So those would be overlapping timelines.
If it's a reduction in severity, we would certainly support it as a vendor. That's a shorter time frame. We like that idea.
I kind of figured that would be the case.
This is Anne again. I mean, I'd like to propose that, and I probably do have a pretty short timeline because once I try not to send out an updated Schematron more than once a month, and it's almost always just facilities changes. And if it's a positive rule change, I don't know how you word that, where it's
a reduction,
less restrictive, or just facility changes, that it be something that is implemented. I hate to say as soon as possible, but once it's out there, like there's no expectation that this would be a 90-day.
Is there a reason though to mandate or to document it that it'd be less than 90 days? If it's a beneficial rule or change, wouldn't most vendors just rush to it anyway?
I would hope so. Because that's usually agencies then are contacting me and I'm trying to get things out as quickly as possible. And I think the last thing that anybody would want is you want a predictable system, but you would want to benefit the stakeholder, the customer, as much as possible without causing chaos at the vendors when they're trying to implement everything. That's what my opinion is.
This is Kevin in Michigan, and I'm kind of of the same mindset. If the new Schematron, if we implement it and a vendor is still using the old Schematron and they can still submit a file, there's no negative effect. So if I'm adding additional facilities or additional, or changing a rule from, an error to a warning, somebody who still has the old Schematron would still be able to submit records if it passes that old Schematron. So there really is no ill effect. Now, if I'm switching something from a warning to an error, that's a different story.
Right, so I think we're talking about when does the new Schematron go into effect on the state repository endpoint, and just whether, in some cases we want there to be a lead time to make sure that people are able to have time to implement the rule, not caught by surprise and things like that. But if it's a less restrictive one, then lighting it up sooner does not cause any ill effects, and it wouldn't even matter so much how fast adopted on the vendor side, as gentleman from Michigan said.
Well, okay, so this is Anne again, because I think I'm the one that brought up this whole mare's nest. So I do a change log, and I think it's pretty detailed. It's in Excel, it's not fancy. And it describes each change and exactly what it is and what the old thing was and what the new thing was for anybody who wants to read it. If there was a change log or like a little checklist that the state filled out, where it just said, these are only facility changes, or these are facility changes and less restrictive rules, where it was clearly that the vendor could see that the change, because that's probably part of it, I would think. If you don't get a change log and you don't really know if that new Schematron is containing things that are going to impact you, then maybe we should have an established process for the states would say, this is only a facilities change, or this is a facilities change and Schematron rules, but they are less restrictive in these ways. And I'm not trying to put more on the states, but I think that's probably a fair stipulation if we're going to ask for faster Schematron applications in those cases. Anyone disagree?
No, I was actually thinking, is that something like the TAC might be able to do, is to create a changelog template for the states? That way everyone looks the same.
Yeah.
And it would contain all the information that you needed.
Hey, this is Cassie from Georgia. I can agree to the same thing. I think 90 days is appropriate for the more restricted rules. Maybe 60 days is more appropriate for the less restricted and facilities. Maybe it's something we can work it into where it states that and maybe a better guidance.
Hey, I might have an idea that might help with this and also solve a related problem. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, Kaylin, we can.
Okay. So we have run up against this problem and a closely related problem, which is that a state might ask us to re-upload a customer's entire backlog going back a year or two. For whatever reason, they just say, can you just re-upload everything to us again? Which kind of stumbles into the same problem as a Schematron update, because you're then asking for old data that passed a prior Schematron and now does not pass the current Schematron. So you run into the very same situation as if the state had published a brand new Schematron and the providers don't have it yet. And what I've seen is a very elegant solution to both problems. And I want to shout out to the state of New York for this, is whenever they're going to throw down a rule that is more restrictive, or if they are going to change their facility codes, e-disposition.02, that all such rules check E times before switching themselves on. So the new or the more restrictive rule simply does not apply to any trip of the data service prior to X. And so that way you could change your facility list. And if then if a year later, the provider has to re-upload old data that have different codes, the facility code check rule simply does not apply anymore, because it would break everything if it did. So it would be awesome if there was some standing guideline nationally that said, if you're going to cinch up or tighten up a rule or change your facility, if you're going to do something to your facility codes other than adding new ones, if you're going to be changing or taking them away, that you have an E times check.
I think that most states, not just by general, I don't know, we discussed it and suggested, and I think it's a great idea, that when we do an update to our Schematron, that we do put a times on it most of the time, especially if it's, for me, I don't when they're less restrictive, if I don't mind them being retroactively applied. I do when anything's more restrictive, and I build in the time it's going to take me to change everything else and test the rules. I don't know if I have a way to do it for facilities. I myself probably wouldn't, because I don't really take things out unless some hospital has closed, and I don't take much old data anymore. But I think we certainly, most states do. There's not a rule. I don't think there's a policy or a guideline. I don't know, Kevin might know because he was in charge of the DMC before, but I think a lot of us do put dates in there because it does become a problem, as Kathy said, but I don't for facilities. Because I have a new hospital that opens up and I get a licensing number from our licensing department the day it opens. And then I have agencies trying to transport to there until I can get that new Schematron out. So,
yes, ma'am. One problem we see though in other states is if a state is enforcing facility code and name, then if the facility name changes because they got acquired and changed their name, then old data will not pass the new rule. And so then we have to go in and apply retroactive modifications to customer data to retroactively change facility names before you can re-upload old trips.
Yeah, and I just don't know if, in my system, I don't know of a way to actually do that for facilities. That's not the way it's set up unless I tell my vendor to do it for each one. I don't require a name match though, so maybe I'm just different.
Well, if you do it through Schematron, so I think she means.
Right. There's a Schematron rule that provides an E times check, right, Caitlin?
Yes, sir. That if it's going to check facility code and name, and the names sometimes change, then a times check would be awesome to just, hey, we're not going to apply this rule to old stuff. If we ever ask for a re-upload, it'll be fine.
Okay.
Hey, Clay, this is Brian in Virginia, because we actually do the name and code matching. And I've actually with Image Trend, I've actually had to get them to add that into the Schematron file for me, because there was no way for me to actually create some type of a validation rule and put in an e-times check. I put e-times checks in everything else. So I can actually, if the vendors will work with us so that we can establish that functionality in the Schematron, I'm wide open to doing that.
Yeah, Brian, good comment. Yeah, so let us take this back. We'll add this as an additional piece to add to the guidance for Schematron. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a really good idea.
Hey, Clay, this is Josh Legler. I did a presentation for state data managers about 3 years ago that I think covered this topic of making rules more restrictive versus less restrictive, and had just some points on that. It's okay if I share my screen for a sec?
Oh yeah, please.
Okay. And I'll send this over to NEMSIS staff as a reference, but I think this pretty well summarizes what everyone was talking about here this morning. If you're making the rules more restrictive, you go ahead and publish them, you give the vendors some number of months to implement at the local level, and then finally you enforce the rules in your state system and consider using effective date within your rule logic. On the other hand, if you're making rules less restrictive, go ahead and publish them. You can go ahead and implement or deploy them immediately in your state system because you're going to accept more records, not less. And the local implementation timeline could be more flexible. So I'll send that over just as a reference that could be used as we're writing up some guidelines.
Great, thank you. All right, fantastic, great comments. Any other comments before we move on? It's been a great discussion. Great, okay, all right, fantastic. Well, thank you for that. I've got one more topic. I'm going to cover it just real quickly. Want to let the states know that we have now released and is available on the website just under your state reports, under version 3 state reports. With all the other reports is a new dashboard that allows you to look at offload time, right? So this became an incredibly important issue during COVID, and it will continue to be in the future whenever we face, I don't know, a mass casualty event or other issues where the states may want to look and check to see if there are areas of their state that are becoming overwhelmed by patients. And so we've developed this and we'll support it. It's available to the states through their password protected process. It includes a user guide that can be helpful to describing several things I'm just going to mention here real quickly. The dashboard allows you to look at just a small time frame, because the way that the heat map works is it's based on whether, for example, there is a percentage of all cases that are going to particular hospitals within zip codes that have, for example, an APOT time that's described as an ambulance patient offload time greater than 60 minutes, then that zip code would show up red, right? So we have a small time frame under which the denominator and the numerator are developed for that percentage. But that would allow you to look by zip code whether or not there are long offload times. That is from the time that EMS arrives at the hospital until care is handed over to the ED personnel. You'll notice lots of areas that aren't that have no representation, and that's of course because this dashboard only applies to zip codes for which hospitals are present where EMS transfers patients. So it includes a listing of all patients, and you can also look at what we have dialed in as priority 1 patients. And so this would be patients that meet a certain criteria that are listed in this companion document. And I'll just show that real quickly. So that includes like when you leave lights and sirens from the scene, or your team, your EMS pre-alerted the hospital. if the final acuity is critical, if it's a STEMI or stroke, or if any of the criteria for a level 1 or level 2 trauma transfer are met, they're listed as a priority 1 patient. So that just gives you an idea of what that patient group is. The dashboard also allows you to look at turnaround time. So this is after you have actually passed off the responsibility of the patient to a provider, whether it's in a hospital or not, until the time that you're back in service. And so again, the map is much fuller, right? Because it just doesn't apply only to patients arriving at hospitals. But again, there's a slightly different metrics that's associated with the heat map. But again, states will be able to look and see where areas where there's a long turnaround time. Now, turnaround time can be long for a number of reasons, but it was important during COVID, I think, and continues to be because of the need to disinfect the back of the ambulance. So anyway, that's just a brief overview. Feel free to go through the companion document. This is now available to states. Any questions in regards to its use?
No option to change those limits.
Yeah, that's a great question, David. I think we at the TAC have not done a good job of working with vendors to ensure that their representations of a similar topic utilize, for example, the same legend, right? The same time frames for the colors, right? In this example. So your point's well taken, David. And I think later in the summer, we're going to work with you as vendors to see if we can do a better job of harmonizing with what you're doing, so that a state or an agency, when viewing a NEMSIS Tableau dashboard, will have similar or at least close to similar metrics to what the vendor's showing them. So thank you, David.
Hey, David, this is Eric. Just a quick question. So on this particular topic, do you know the values off the top of your head that you use? I'm just curious. These came to us from one of the many COVID meetings where this topic was discussed. They gave us these numbers. And I'd have to go back to my notes and look at where who actually said it. But these weren't TAC generated or NHTSA generated, but I'm curious as to what yours are.
Okay, we don't do it as a single level. We use buckets. Like I think it's like 0 to 2, 2 to 4, and onward like that. So this one about the turnaround time, I'm less concerned about, but the one about the hospital time, the APO time, right? The 60 minutes seems like more of a large city number, whereas small hospital, 30 minutes could mean they're overwhelmed.
Yeah, we had that conversation as a part of this discussion, is whether or not these times should be based on urbanicity. I know that growing up in a volunteer system, we were not really always in a hurry to get back to the station. And we were about a 25-minute, normally it was about a 25, 30-minute ride back to our particular station. But I can see where you're right. In downtown Baltimore, 30 minutes at the hospital is going to back up a system on a busy night. So yeah, I think this is where Clay and Josh and others often have this conversation of, you have to look at that green area or that red area and say, okay, what does that mean to me and where I'm at? And I will tell you that has been a difficult thing to explain to non-NEMSIS, non-EMS users. For example, at NHTSA and DOT, is that while greater than 5% is okay here, it's not good over here. So people look at this map, and it's kind of one of the misleading features of graphically displaying data this way, you look at this map and you say, oh, wow, this is all green. But as you just pointed out, 29 minutes here is not necessarily a good thing, but 29 minutes somewhere else might be. So, you know, like Clay said, I think this is something that we're definitely going to take on towards the summer now that we can focus a little less on all COVID all the time to, okay, how can we get some economies of scale and some standardized distribution of not just the data, but how we're reporting it out. And any suggestions you have, we are more than willing to listen. So thanks for bringing it up.
All right. So for a heat map, you kind of expect the red spots to be higher than usual. And I think that might be what's missing here. And I'm not sure how much that would take on your end, whether that's feasible or not. But that'd be my thought, is that significantly more than usual.
Yeah. Thank you, David. That's a good comment. And that's exactly what we want to get into later this or through the summer is how best to quantify that very idea. So
yeah, and you know, quantifying it's awesome, but it might be just as simple in some cases as normal and abnormal. So like what's you know, is this something to pay attention to or not something to pay attention to?
Yep, great comments. Any other comments before I turn it back over to Julianne? Okay, Julianne, sorry I didn't leave a lot of time. We're right at the hour, I think. Maybe we may need to move some things to next call. I don't know. What do you think? I
think we're done. Well, we've got open forum and items from Eric. And
great. Okay.
And we're done. So I think let's turn it over to Eric, and then if there are any other open items.
I'll defer to open items. The only thing I have for the group is please be safe. Although vaccines are being distributed, COVID continues to wreak havoc all over the country. There are hotspots popping up here and there. Please take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. That's all I have, Julianne.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Anything that anyone wants to bring up in the last couple minutes?
Just one thing related back to the Schematron and facility names. So for the states that do try to do a double check on the facility code versus the hospital name, would you possibly consider using the street address instead of the hospital name? They brought up that hospital names, they change. They change actually rather frequently. Addresses by and large do not. There's also far less arbitrary nature of the addresses because there is actually a very strict standard set out by the post office about this is the standard address, and you don't run into Saint versus ST versus ST without a period, something like that. So I was wondering if that would accomplish the double check that you're looking for, and be far less pain for the Schematron rules, and possibly even put more addresses into the state data set, which are often not included in that.
Hi, this is Jennifer. That actually, especially for states that will use one code for an entire campus, there could be different addresses for the same facility code and the same facility. So that could become troublesome.
So if it's multiple facilities with the same address, or the other way around, you're saying?
Well, like the ER can have one address and the front door of the hospital would have a different address. Or the MRI location could have a different entrance and address, but it's all the same facility. And so that address could be different.
Both of those are completely valid. I just wrote in the chat, I agree, but addresses seem to be less troublesome than names because they could be somewhat normalized.
There's good continued discussion on this, so I think we'll carry it over to our next call as well. We'll also make some adjustment to that document that we're working on and get that sent out for some feedback. But this is really good discussion, very productive. Thank you. We've got some upcoming events and we'll send out promotional material for all of those. And our next meeting for V3 implementation will be April 28th. So 2 weeks from today, same time, same place. Thank you everyone for being here with us today. Great discussion. Really appreciate your participation. It makes these calls very worthwhile. Thank you everyone and have a good day.